Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
The danger must be growing, for the rowers keep on rowing. Chaos Kids.
What?
I'm Naomi.
I'm Amber, and this is Crime, Wine, and Chaos. What is that from?
What is that from?
Yeah.
The scariest scene in Willy Wonka.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Mhm.
What do you mean?
It took
Where
me a
is that
minute.
from,
I'm sorry.
sister? I'm so disappointed in you right now.
I'm so sorry. Fuck. Please forgive me.
I'll work on
Oh,
that.
shit.
I'll try.
All right.
try.
All right.
How are you? What's going on?
A whole lot of nothing is going on. Well, that's not true. I'm going to go into the studio tomorrow and Saturday for our next EP. And so I have the day off from my regular job. This week's been cray-cray. Worked the farmer's market again last night. That's a 13-hour day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
That's all right. It's been fun.
Okay.
I've been
You've been
outside.
doing like woman on the street type stuff.
That's right.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's fun.
What about you?
That's fun. I got nothing, sister. I got nothing.
All right.
I
So
I'm really I don't
it's usually me that
You
has
guys-
nothing.
Look, you guys, I was racing to be ready to record on time, which I have not been in that position in a long time, and I really struggled with writing my story this week. So,
Oh. Yeah. Mine's a mamma jamma. Is yours a mamma jamma?
I mean, compared to the other Mamma Jammas I've done recently, no, it's just like a normal Mamma Jamma, not like a Mamma Jamma Jamma.
A Norma
you know what I mean?
jamma.
It's a
I understand.
You know what? Old me, like this month, Naomi would have said, yeah, it's a Mamma Jamma. Now it's not a Mamma Jamma.
Pre this
anymore.
month is old you. Wow.
Have you ever heard that comedian who's like when people show you a picture, like this is me when I was younger. And he's like,
yeah.
every picture of you is a picture of you when you were younger.
It was yesterday. I was younger.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So should we dive in then, since we have a...
I think we should, because let's get this party
Okay,
started.
well,
Party. We use that term loosely here.
For sure. It's a Debbie Downer party. I'm going to tell you what I did here, because you're like, it's already not off to a good start. We just had virtual wine night, and several people brought up this story. And we are like, we don't do the stories that everybody else does. And then I was talking to Michael afterwards, and he was like, I think people want to hear your guys' take on it. It's not just like a cover song. It's not like we don't want to hear that. I want to hear your interpretation of that.
Are we going into the Susan Powell story?
We're doing the Susan Powell story.
Holy shit, sister.
I have worked on this like a little bit every day since wine night. This was a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Mm-hmm.
It's a big.
Okay. Are you buckled in?
Always.
Okay. All right.
Safety first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or third, depending on who you're talking to. But yeah.
Okay. So yes, I'm going to tell you about. I don't like that it's still called the disappearance of Susan Cox Powell, because we know she's been murdered.
She was murdered. Yeah.
And also, I wonder if her family would prefer that she just be referred to as Susan Cox after.
I mean,
if my husband kills me, please drop my married name.
Can we change? You can't change your name posthumously, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think you can.
Anyway, well, Susan Cox grew up in a family with 5 sisters. Her mom, Judy, and dad, Chuck, says that she was super positive and happy and like full of life. She was a hard worker and determined to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. In high school, she wanted to go into cosmetology, but more than anything, she wanted to be a wife and a mother. In fact, her dad said she was a little impatient with the process of finding a potential husband. And that is when she met Josh Powell.
I look. We're not here to victim blame. We're not shaming anyone. But I'm telling you, when you're in a hurry,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yep.
So the two met through their Mormon church through what is called a single adult ward, which is like a singles meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
The two were married on April 6, 2001. Josh was 23, Susan was 19.
Oh, so
I
young.
know. They were only dating for 2 months before Josh proposed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Look, finding a good partner, it's like thrift store shopping. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
When you go to the thrift store, you have to like kind of you go through every item on the rack, and like you can go through like rows and rows of racks and not find something. But you might find a gem in there, but you really got to look,
Yeah.
and you got to take your time.
You got to take your time. Mm-hmm.
You got to go into the thrift store knowing that you're going to be in there a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, a lot of this is because of their faith and
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So Susan's friend Kiersey said that Josh was extremely loud and overbearing, and his opinions were the only right ones.
Guilty.
You're saying that about you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to say anything.
You don't have to tell me. I have done my own inventory multiple times. I am well aware of where I fall short. Okay.
Okay. Great. Well, Josh wasn't. He was not aware. He was also extremely obsessive. Her close friends told her that she shouldn't marry him, and they told her that she should date for a couple of years and have fun before settling down. She should be thrifting.
She should be thrifting.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, one of her family members said to her that when they look at Josh, all they see is darkness.
Oh. And also, like, listen to the people who know you and love you.
Right.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, like, it's also that thing of, like, being so focused on the destination that you're just not even thinking about enjoying the journey. Like, there is a lot of fun to be had in getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where most of the fun is. That's what people don't realize.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to really actively work hard for that not to be where the fun stops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But she wanted to marry him. She was also very dedicated to her religion, and one of the rules of her religion was that you marry for life. No matter what, like you're stuck, basically.
Which is all the more reason to take your time.
I
know. Man.
I know.
Can you imagine, like, I think about the decisions and the people that I spent time with when I was like 18 and 19.
Oh gosh.
Woo!
Can you imagine?
No!
No.
All these years later, still being with one of them?
No. Oh my God.
No.
Oh, that sounds terrible. Except one of them I circled back to, and it's great. He's great. But
yeah, but you still had to.
We wouldn't have. We wouldn't have made it through raising children together.
No, you needed the journey of a separate path to come back to each other in order for it to work.
That's right. Like, oh yeah, that was a line in Sex and the City where Charlotte's like, "Wouldn't that be so romantic if you ended up with your high school sweetheart?" And she said something to the effect of like, "I circle back to the first one after like I had it right the first time 20 years ago, and what the hell was all this rubbish for?" But
so you could be the people that you could be together later.
That's true. Okay, so they get married. They live in Puyallup, Washington for the first 3 years of their marriage. Josh had tried to be a real estate agent, but that wasn't really working out. And they were living with Josh's dad, who we'll get to.
Right. But also, the way you described him does not sound like the kind of person I want to go be looking at houses with.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
no wonder
not.
He wasn't successful. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. He struggled to just be successful in general,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the couple decide to move to Utah and hopefully find some better job prospects there. So they move to West Valley City, Utah, and shortly after, Susan is like thrilled to learn that she's pregnant. She gives birth to her first son, Charlie, and shortly after to another son, Braden. Like they're pretty close in age.
Yeah.
On the outside, it seems like Susan is super happy, but her close friend Tara says that Susan confided in her about what was really going on in her home.
Already.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Susan said that Josh had all of these expectations of her and that she was like, he demanded that she meet them, like it wasn't an option. She was also telling a couple of close friends that Josh had been physically violent with her. There were a couple of times when he had pushed her.
Mm-hmm.
Tara said she got to a point where she hated Josh so much that she wouldn't visit Susan at her house anymore. She was like, you can come over here or we can meet in a park or something, but I'm not going to your home.
I am not spending time in the presence of that man.
Mm-hmm. She could not fucking stand him. And Susan told her that this wasn't the man that I married. And she even asked Tara if she knew legally what her options were. So she was already...
Even though her faith said she can't get divorced, she was already thinking about it anyway.
About it, yeah. Mm-hmm. By December of 2009, Josh and Susan had been married for 8 years. And it was on December 7th, 2009, that Josh's mom called 911 and reported that all 4 of them had gone missing. She tells dispatch that Josh and Susan didn't show up for work and that several people had tried to call them and they had even gone to their house and pounded on the door and they were not getting a response. So a few officers go to the Powell home and it had snowed heavily the night before and there's no tire tracks in the driveway, no footprints like up the walkway to the door.
Mm-hmm.
Josh's mom and sister meet the officers at the home and they tell them, you know, the officers tell them we'd be willing to break into the house if you guys like give us permission and take responsibility for the broken window or whatever, like we'll do that. And so they were like, yeah, let's do that. So they go inside. And the first thing they notice are 2 large box fans set to high, blowing directly onto the couch, which has obviously just been cleaned. Mm-hmm. Josh's sister goes into the couple's bedroom and sees Susan's purse like sitting there on the dresser, which is like her car keys, her purse. It's kind of
everything.
Weird. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a woman's purse.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you basically like you have your purse. There's things in there that they just live in your purse.
Yeah. For sure.
Like your keys and your wallet and all that just lives in there.
Yes.
And if you leave the house, you just grab that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you don't leave the house without taking that.
Correct.
Because that's your I'm leaving the house bag.
That's right.
That's how purses work, you guys. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Run that down again.
Just
yes.
I mean, in case you're planning it, never mind.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Mm-hmm. So the day before, on December 6th, Giovanna Owings, who is a friend of Susan's, spent the afternoon at the Powell house. She said that while she was there, Susan was working on a blanket that she was making for one of her boys, and Josh and the boys were in the kitchen making pancakes. And she said that was weird because Josh never cooked anything.
Of course he didn't.
Mm-hmm. Giovanna said that Josh brought Susan a plate of pancakes, and after a while, she told her friend that she was feeling tired and was going to go lay down for a bit.
Uh-huh.
By 5 o'clock, Josh tells Giovanna that he was going to take the boys sledding and basically asked Giovanna to leave. So she was the last person to see any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the police are at the house along with these family members and a few friends. And even though they have all called Josh several times and got no answer, he does answer when Giovanna calls. Is that a leaf blower?
You can hear it.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason why I was struggling to finish my story.
Because it was distracting you?
Yeah, I literally had to put my headphones on and like blast music in my ears so that I could focus.
I'm sorry. It's okay.
It's been going on for hours. I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
what
you
is
guys.
there to blow for hours?
I don't know.
Oh, God.
Why are you asking me?
I don't know. I was laughing at how that sentence came out. What is there to blow for hours?
Oh, well.
Okay, so Giovanna calls. He answers the phone and she asks him, like, where are you at? And he's like, I'm in West Valley. And she's like, you need to get home. Like, we're all at your house. We don't know where you are.
Cops are here. We broke in. Like, what the fuck?
And he's like, well, Susan should be at work. But after he got off the phone with Giovanna, he turns around and goes 20 minutes south of where he was calling from, and leaves Susan a voicemail. So it's like, he's like, I'm in West Valley. She's like, get home. He's like, cool, I'll get home. But cell phone records will later show that after that call, he turned around, drove 20 minutes south, called and left Susan a voicemail.
Drove 20 minutes south away from his house. Okay.
Then he heads back north. Then he goes to Susan's work and calls her phone and leaves her a voicemail again saying that he's out front to pick her up, even though multiple people have already told him that she didn't show up for work and like get home.
He's such a I can't.
Hey, I'm out here. I'm here to pick.
Okay.
It's such a
really, it's like a show that isn't even that good. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
It's a performance that no one is buying.
That's just, yeah. God, this guy is so gross.
Mm-hmm.
After several hours, he finally pulls up to his house, and immediately the police tell him that he needs to go down to the station to have a chat with them. Right?
Yeah.
So he goes down there. He said the last time he saw Susan was midnight the night before, when he packed up the boys to go camping.
Uh-huh.
At midnight.
At midnight.
In a snowstorm.
In a snowstorm.
Mhm.
Yep.
2 babies.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what babies want to do. So detectives, obviously, they're like, this doesn't make any sense why you would do that. But Josh didn't want to talk. So after an hour, he left and said that he would return the next day for the rest of the interview. He's like, I got to go.
I can't. Okay.
Yeah. But the next day, his mom and his sister come by the house, and Josh is cleaning out his car during the time that he was supposed to be at the police station for his interview. Yeah. So
it was just really dirty. It needed to be cleaned.
Yeah.
Right now.
This guy that does zero cooking and cleaning has made pancakes, scrubbed down the couch, and now cleaned out his car.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a new leaf, Amber.
That's right. He's really turning it around.
Okay.
So he shows up for his interview 4 hours late. And one thing that the police learned the day before was that Susan's phone was with Josh in the minivan the whole time. So the detectives are asking him, why would you be calling Susan's phone and leaving her voicemails when you had her phone? And he didn't really have an explanation for that.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, I think I had put this later on, but he's a mouth breather. You know, those people that seem like they can't close their mouth all the way and they're always just kind of like this. It's gross.
Look,
no,
maybe that's just like a physical thing. I don't, I'm not going to.
Listen, I'm not saying across the board people that struggle with this. Like, I'm saying this guy. Listen, I say he's fair game. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All I'm saying is there's plenty of reasons to rip into this guy without that. That's all I'm saying.
I see. Okay. So, wow. Noted.
I mean, he's an absolute piece of shit. We can agree on.
Yeah. He's also
dumb. He's not smart.
No, he's not smart.
At all.
No. So he has her phone. He just sits there almost annoyed, and he has like no concern whatsoever for the fact that his wife is missing. And again, after an hour, he left. But the police did secure a search warrant for his van and his home. And so they were like in the middle of searching his van, like while he was in the interview. And then when he up and left, they were like, well, we're not done yet. So you can wait until in the lobby until we're done. But instead he called a cab, had the cab take him to the airport where he rented a car. Instead of waiting for his van to be done, right? Then he took that rental car. He was gone for 20 hours and put over 800 miles on the car. And it is still unknown, like, where he went.
What year was this again?
This was
2007?
No. 2000.
Sorry.
That's 2009.
2009.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like before, there would have necessarily been like an automatic kind of GPS tracking and like installed in vehicles or
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
There was no activity on his cell phone during this time. There was also no activity on his dad Steve's cell phone during that time either.
Hmm.
So back in Puyallup, Washington, that's where Dad Steve lives. The West Valley City Police head up to Washington to interview Steve. And it was during this interview that police first learned of Steve's obsession with Susan.
I'm so curious how they learned this.
This guy is fucking gross and
Yes.
delusional. He says to the police that the feelings were mutual, that Susan craved his attention.
He used that word?
Mm-hmm. Why?
It just... Something about that word. Keep going.
Craved?
Yes.
It's a trigger word for you?
No, it's just him using that word.
God, oh, God.
He told them this, like, when they interviewed him. This is what he's saying when they're interviewing him about his missing daughter-in-law.
Yep.
What a fucking weirdo.
He's such a weirdo. I've never seen anybody quite like this guy before. It's very scary how off his rocker he is. So he would constantly videotape her. He would sit outside of her work in his van and film her coming and going. He
told the police officers this.
Yes.
Why?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying though? Like, that's weird. They're coming to find out what they're trying to figure out, like the relationship between the two, her and Josh, and he's just divulging this entire creepy creeper.
Yeah.
Thing.
I've known,
you know what I'm saying?
I think I'm not going to try and pretend to understand this guy, but he's obviously obsessed with her. And I've known, like, I've been in conversations with people who have an obsession, and they can always turn the conversation back to their obsession, even when it's inappropriate.
So
it's
weird.
almost like
compulsive.
Yeah, it's a compulsion. That's what I got out of it, but who the hell knows? I mean, yeah. So he would sit outside of her work. He had journals about her. He had photos of her that he photoshopped himself into.
Oh, you want to talk about Susan? I'm so glad you asked. Hold on. Let me get my journals. I've been waiting to talk about Susan with somebody.
Yes.
Here's pictures of us together. They're not really, but don't we look good together? Hold on. Let me show you the ones that I did.
This guy's fucking nuts.
Wild. It is so weird.
Yes. And his obsession with her had been going on for the entire 8 years. And it started back when Susan and Josh briefly lived with him in the early days of their marriage. He even made an offer to her that he could share her with his son. Yeah.
What? Oh.
And
no wonder they moved away.
That's literally my next sentence. It was apparently right after this offer that they moved out. But it wasn't too long after they moved out that Josh started allowing his dad to come around again. This is a thing that I think is weird, is that he was very openly like this in front of Josh, and Josh just allowed it. He never...
That whole family dynamic is just...
Oh, yeah, we'll get to other people in this family. But it never... I mean, I don't know. I think Josh was in his own way either obsessed with or just really had such admiration for his dad that it almost treated his wife like an offering. Like, sure, anything for you, Dad.
Ew.
Yeah, it's just weird and gross, right?
All around.
So police go to Susan's work to talk to her coworkers, and that is when they learned that Susan had a safety deposit box at the bank. And inside the deposit box was a self-made home video where she documented all of the assets in the house. There was also a handwritten will And at the top of it, it said, "For the family and friends of Susan, except Josh, husband. I don't trust him."
This reminds me of that gal, um, and I can't remember her name, which is really upsetting, and I'm sorry. The gal that I covered that worked at Morgan Stanley in Bellevue.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Like, it was her coworkers that knew.
Yep. That's smart. That is smart, although very sad. And yeah, but a safety deposit box like that's like she really went the extra step.
Yeah, she meant it.
Mm-hmm. It also says, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. Take care of my boys."
Oh, God.
I know. So even though Susan worked and she was the one that generally had more stable employment because Josh seemed to be unable to fucking get it together, he completely controlled her financially.
Mm-hmm.
She had an allowance of $100 a month, and she was expected to get groceries and gas with that.
What?
Uh-huh. Their former babysitter says that there was a time when Josh got mad at Susan for giving each of the boys a hot dog for dinner. He said that she should have split one in half.
What?
He's like rationing out hot dogs.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also, here's the thing. Like, she was clearly not even fully divulging to her closest friends how bad it was.
Right.
If she was literally writing a note in her safe deposit box that, like, if I die, even if it looks like an accident, it wasn't.
Correct.
Like, that's how bad things were with him.
Mm-hmm.
She was afraid that he was going to murder her.
That's right. Oh, God. I can't imagine sleeping next to somebody like that at night.
Right. How do you sleep at all?
I don't know.
How do you close your eyes or let your guard down for a second?
I don't know. She probably had insomnia. I mean, who knows?
Right?
Yeah. He also got rid of one of their cars, and Susan had to ride her bike to work, which was 7 miles.
What?
Mm-hmm. Apparently that spring, she confronted Josh and said that he needed to straighten up or she was going to file for a divorce.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So it's 3 days into her disappearance. They still don't have any leads. Well, I mean, they think Josh is a piece of shit, but they don't have any reason to arrest him, right?
Right.
And police are searching the desert where Josh claims he went camping with the boys.
Mm-hmm.
When they talked to Susan's coworkers, one of the things that they learned was that Josh loved watching true crime shows, and he would talk to Susan about the best places to hide a body. And more than once, he said that the best place to hide them would be in a mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And some of the areas in Utah where those are like super treacherous and vast. And they went out there multiple times, but it was literally like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Right.
Mm-hmm. In that first week, Susan's family hadn't yet turned on Josh. They initially believed that Susan was missing and he was just as distraught as everyone else. But by the second week, they're starting to have their doubts.
Mm-hmm.
Josh went back to have another interview with the police, and this time he brought an attorney with him, which is advised to do anyway. But at this interview, his behavior is real strange. He sat in the corner and refused to say anything.
So why was he there?
I mean, his attorney spoke for him, but even when his attorney was asking like clarifying questions of him, he was just like kind of mumbling like, yeah. And Susan's family is like, your wife is missing and you're not doing anything. The fuck?
Uh-huh.
This is exactly the not doing anything was exactly the behavior of Scott Peterson and Chris Watts.
Yeah.
Just doing nothing.
Doing nothing, just sitting back. Oh, the cops are taking care of it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when somebody you love is actually missing and you actually care about them and you didn't murder them, you're like printing flyers, going door to door. You're rallying the troops like every day, looking for thinking of any place you could think of to look for them.
Right.
Like, and looking everywhere you can even imagine and not imagine they could be. Like, you don't stop.
Right. No, there was none of that.
None of that.
None of that. Nope. So, during this time, reporters are like camped outside of their home. And one of these reporters actually gets a brief interview with Josh when he was going, like, he pulled up and was going from his car into his house. And it's so cringy. The interviewer is asking him about him and Susan, how they both missed work on Monday, and like, where were you? Your family was looking for you. Neither of them had called in sick. And Josh says that he went camping with his boys the night before, and he must have left the house thinking it was Saturday night. Like, he got his days mixed up.
He just got his days mixed up, you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Totally mixed up. Okay, so back to fucking Steve, the father. Steve was in Washington State, where he lives, at the time that Susan went missing, and was with 3 of his other adult children. So he couldn't have been physically involved in the disappearance of Susan, but that does not mean that he's not connected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the Powell family. Oh boy. There are 5 children: Josh, Michael, John, Jennifer, and Alina. Josh is the oldest boy. Susan's sister said when she first met the rest of Josh's family, it was just like when she met Josh, like just fucking creepy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Steve Powell married the kid's mom, Tarika Martin, in 1973. The oldest kid, Jennifer, says that their home life was really bad. She says that Steve would pit the boys against the girls all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That he treated their mom like shit. And Tarika says that the reason for the divorce was because Steve had abandoned the church. He was heavily into pornography, and he was teaching their kids problematic things. Like, he would show like cartoon pornography to his kids.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. What finally did it for Tarika was when she contracted a venereal disease from Steve frequenting sex workers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is literally why sexual health doctors are like, I don't care if you're in a monogamous relationship or not. You should just be using condoms all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, shit.
Because that kind of shit happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really common way for women to find out that their partner is cheating on them.
Yeah, that's awful. That's
Yeah.
awful to do to somebody.
Yes.
This piece of shit. So the two were divorced in 1994. Jennifer says that her dad was always focused on his own wants and desires, regardless if it was harmful to others, and that he's basically a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And he was teaching his boys to act just like him.
Sure.
So investigators are learning how fucking weird the Powell family is, and they decide to put an undercover investigator on the case to sort of follow the family and see if anyone says anything incriminating about Susan's disappearance.
Okay.
Apparently, Josh's big concern this whole time was that if he went to jail, his sister would get his children and they would be raised as Mormons. And he didn't want that.
What? But Susan was a Mormon.
Yes. And Josh, one of the things that was like a problem in their marriage was that he had stopped going to church.
Even though they met at church.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like that was heavily influenced by his dad, who had completely abandoned the church. And I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I'm always going to advocate for people to leave the Mormon church.
Right.
But not like that.
Not like that. But he clearly still wanted the Mormon wife.
Yes.
So he wanted to eat his cake and have it too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you said it the right way.
I know.
I love you.
Thank you. I love you. Mm-hmm. Learned that from the Unabomber.
Sentence you never thought you'd say.
Yeah. No, I kind of thought I'd say it. That tracks.
Learned that from the Unabomber.
I did.
So funny. I learned that from our mother.
Oh. Oh. Okay. So they also learned that Josh doesn't have any friends. And the person that he was the closest to was his brother, Mike. So investigators get a subpoena to search through Mike's emails. And one of the emails that stood out to them right away was a company called Apollo Mapping. And Mike had contacted Apollo Mapping and requested a super high resolution aerial shot of a wrecking yard in Pendleton, Oregon.
What?
Yeah. So the day after Susan went missing, Mike and Alina, two of Josh's siblings, drove from Washington to Utah to be with Josh.
Mm-hmm.
On their way back from Utah, Mike's car breaks down in Oregon. He was offered $100 by the salvage yard in whatever city he broke down in, but instead of that, he paid to have it towed to Pendleton to a salvage yard that destroys the vehicles.
Okay.
Mhm. Also, by all accounts, the car wasn't like totaled or unrepairable, so it was weird that the solution was to leave it at a junkyard in the first place. So, of course, investigators are thinking that there's evidence in that car. So they go to the Pendleton junkyard with dogs, and the dogs immediately hit on Mike's car, specifically the trunk. And they swab the trunk for DNA, but it comes back as inconclusive.
Mm.
Mhm. So by January, it's been about a month since Susan went missing. Josh's older sister, Jennifer, contacts the investigators and asks if she could be wired and she will go and visit Josh.
Oh.
Mhm. And see if she can get a confession, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she meets up with the Utah investigators. They travel out to Washington. She meets up with them at the Tacoma PD police station. Um, and they wire her up, and she goes over to her dad's house in Puyallup and has dinner with her dad, Josh, and Mike, who were all there. And the police are in a car one street over. So she's there, she's having dinner, she's making small talk, and eventually she gets Josh alone. And Jennifer really pushes. She's fucking brave. She's the only stable person in this family.
Right.
And the mom who left,
Right.
She basically tells him that he just needs to confess because he obviously did it, but Josh wouldn't budge. And that's when Steve tells her that it's time for her to leave.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. But before she goes, she tells Josh, why don't you just say where her body is so you can, give her family the proper burial? And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, I can see it in your face, Josh. But he doesn't budge. And he says, my attorney told me not to say anything. He gets mad and leaves. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But she decides to stick around a little bit to see if she can get her dad to talk. But he gets all fucking mad. He starts yelling at Jennifer, saying that she has always had a problem staying connected to reality.
Oh, she's the one that's not
Mhm.
connected to reality.
Coming
Got
from the
it.
man who believes that he's in a relationship with his daughter-in-law and that they're
Right.
going to live happily ever after.
Right.
So it turns into a yelling match, and Jennifer ends up leaving without getting any useful information.
She tried.
Yeah. Josh is still not helping to search for Susan at all. And a month after her disappearance, he leaves their home in Utah and moves in with his dad in Puyallup, Washington.
Hmm.
So honestly, like if someone you love is missing, like she's going to return home there. Why would you sell your home and leave there? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know exactly what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
Yes.
He just keeps doing all these things that are pointing to guilt.
Yeah, 100%.
He calls the babysitter and tells her that they're not going to need their services anymore. He cancels Susan's doctor's appointment. He tries to close out her retirement account.
But she hasn't been declared officially dead.
No. Mm-mm. No.
Okay.
So this totally fucks up the investigation for the Utah PD because they can't investigate him when he's in Washington, right?
Right.
So the Cox family, they also live in Washington. But by this time, Josh is no longer talking to Susan's family. They were suspicious of him. And so basically to punish them, he wouldn't allow Susan's parents to see the kids.
Right.
Susan's family does have a candlelight vigil in Washington, and Josh showed up with the boys, which was weird. But even there, he wouldn't allow Susan's parents to interact with the boys.
What?
He like showed up and played the part of grieving husband and maybe even tried to dangle the kids in front of them. I don't know, to be harmful.
Okay.
So they've got no forensic evidence. On top of that, not too long before Susan's disappearance, Elizabeth Smart had disappeared in Utah, and immediately her family was implicated. So, and of course, 9 months later, she was found. Her family didn't have anything to do with it. So I think this really left an impact on the Utah police to not make arrests based on circumstantial evidence. Like they were just extra cautious about it. And the
Mm-hmm.
DA said that they wouldn't move forward on a murder charge without a body. Mm-hmm. Then in 2011, Josh and his dad start doing like a media circuit. And they're saying that Susan was promiscuous and that she likely ran off with another man. They said that they had her journals from when she was a teenager that could prove that she was sex obsessed.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And Susan's family is pissed. Her dad is
She
like,
ran off with another man, but she left her purse
and her children.
and her children and her cell phone. And,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep, that's right.
And didn't tell a single
Mm-mm.
friend or confidant or one of her 5 sisters.
Right. And she had several close girlfriends who she had confided in, those
Can you
coworkers that
imagine
knew about
if
this
I
safety
decided
deposit
I was running away?
box. Mhm.
There are at least a handful of women in my life, including my sisters, who I'd be like, just so you know, I'm running away.
Right.
I love you. I'm running away.
Right. Totally.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Susan's family is fucking pissed about this bullshit they're saying in the media. Her dad's like, she was a teenage girl writing down her own private thoughts, which she had every right to do. And now these psychos are like sharing them with the world. So the Utah police asked Josh and Steve for the journals. They said,
But like, nobody's buying their story.
no.
Like, nobody believes them. It's just making him look like more of the creep that he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Fuck. So the police ask for the journals, and Steve and Josh are like, no, you can't have them. So they get a search warrant
Okay.
for Steve's and Josh's home in Puyallup.
This is how they find the porn.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
These guys really dug their own grave here.
Yes.
They're going on the media saying they have evidence relating to the disappearance. And then when they don't hand it over, a search warrant gets issued on their home.
The disappearance of a woman that is now national news.
Yes.
Everybody knows about this case.
Mhm. Yeah, this was their own demise. So they execute the search warrant and they're like, oh shit, we found a lot more than just Susan's diaries. Stephen had cotton balls that Susan had used to remove her makeup that he had put into Ziploc bags.
What?
There were several pairs of Susan's underwear in Ziploc bags. There were used tampons that were Susan's.
What?
Toenail clippings, hair clippings, all labeled.
Is he making a voodoo doll? What is going on?
I don't.
This is so fucked.
Uh-huh. Yep. There were over 5,000 pictures and videos of Susan. They took hard drives and laptops, and Stephen even had videos of himself masturbating to pictures of Susan.
Oh my god.
Mhm.
Barf. So gross.
So fucking gross.
That's a job I don't want.
Oh, no. No.
Going through that evidence?
No, can you imagine?
No.
And oh my god, there's all these videos where he's filming her like from his van, like when she's coming and going from work. And in one of them, she sits down and her skirt kind of hikes up a little bit. And he's like, she just did that for me. I'm not
Stop
kidding.
it.
He's so fucking delulu. I'm like, you're stalking her. She doesn't know you're there. She didn't do that for you. Your skirt rides up when you sit down. You fucking piece of shit. God. But he also had videos of other random women on the street that he would take. And he had videos of the young girls that lived in the house next door to him that was clearly from his window into their bathroom window, getting into the shower and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So he was arrested for possession of child sexual assault material, and Josh's kids were taken into protective custody.
Right.
Yes, because they're like, you're living with a pedophile. So Susan's parents immediately start the fight to get custody of the kids.
Fuck yes, they do.
As part of this court process, the kids speak with a child psychologist, and in one of these visits, the psychiatrist asks Charlie, who looks like he's maybe like 6 at the time, Charlie about his mom, and Charlie says, "We can't talk about Susan or camping. I always keep things a secret."
Oh,
And also he's calling her
God.
Susan.
What?
Yeah. So Susan's parents get temporary custody of the boys, but Josh did have an opportunity to get custody back if he could prove that he could provide a stable household. He is also ordered to see a court-appointed psychiatrist who was Dr. Manley. Dr. Manley says that he did have a good bond with his kids. The kids obviously loved him, and there was nothing there that would constitute Josh not having the kids. But in that search warrant, police did find animated pornography on Josh's computer that depicted children and incest.
Ew.
And so because of this, Dr. Manley ordered Josh to undergo a psychosexual evaluation as part of, the conditions of getting his children back, which also included a polygraph examination.
He had to hold the cans.
He had to hold the magical cans. So he does all that. In February of 2012, Josh was awarded supervised visitation with his kids while all of this big custody stuff is still pending, right?
Right.
He was ordered to have visitation at a state facility. But after the first couple visits there, other parents that were there visiting their kids were complaining about Josh being there because it's like a high profile case and everybody.
He might be a murderer.
Yeah. And they're like, we don't want to visit kids here.
Yeah.
So that is when the judge ordered that Josh could have supervised visitations in his home.
Oh, here we go.
So Susan's parents are really upset about this new decision, right? And they have a gut feeling that something's going to go wrong. So February 5th, 2012, it's Super Bowl Sunday. That morning, Josh went to the bank and made a withdrawal, then went to the gas station and got gas. A social worker picked up the boys from Susan's parents' house and was taking them to a home that Josh had just started renting in Puyallup that was down the street from his dad's house. Susan's dad, Chuck, said the social worker was like a 65-year-old woman who was basically just providing transportation, and he was worried about like what this woman would physically be able to do to stop Josh if he decided to do something to the kids, The social worker says the kids were excited to visit their dad, but right when she got there, she makes a 911 call. She says, "I'm a court-ordered supervisor supervising a visitation, and something really weird just happened. The kids went into the house, and the parent, Josh Powell, will not let me in the door." When Josh answered the door, he told the boys, "I have a surprise for you." Then he made eye contact with the social worker and slammed the door in her face.
I remember hearing about it. The way it was described was like he was literally like looking her in the eye.
Yes.
And just
Yes. Ooh, chills.
Me too.
So then she goes on to tell the dispatcher that she can hear one of the kids crying. And the dispatcher is rude. And he says, "I'm still waiting for you to tell me where you are." And she was like, "Oh, you can't find me by GPS?" And he's like, "No, I can't." Then the dispatcher is asking whose house it is. And she tells him it's Josh Powell's house. Then he said, if it's a I don't understand what he was confused about. He said, if it's a supervised visit, you can't supervise yourself. It's like he didn't understand who she was in relationship to the supervised visit. Like what?
She's like, "I'm the supervisor. I'm supposed to be inside the house."
She was very clear, but he wasn't getting it.
Because, oh my God.
So it's like 10 minutes into the call by now. And this conversation is still going on. She's still on the phone with dispatch. And the dispatcher asks her for like the third time whose house it was. And she's like, "It's Josh Powell." Isn't anybody coming? And finally the dispatcher says, okay, we'll send someone there. And the social worker asks how long it will be. And he says, I don't know, ma'am. We have to respond to emergency life-threatening situations first. And she says, this could be life-threatening. I'm afraid for their lives. I can smell gasoline and he won't let me in. And then the dispatcher asks again whose house it is. It's the most frustrating conversation to listen to.
Is he high?
I don't know. Maybe he hasn't slept. He's distracted. I don't know.
He's supposed to be typing.
Mhm.
It's just
Then she hears one of the boys inside the house scream. And inside the house, while this is going on, Josh is calling family members and leaving voicemails. On one of them, he says, this is Josh. I'm calling to say goodbye. I'm not able to live without my sons, and I'm not able to go on anymore. I'm sorry to everyone I've hurt. So inside the house, Josh had soaked the room, the boys, and himself in gasoline and lit a match.
oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
These boys burned alive.
The autopsy showed that the boys were killed with an axe before the fire.
Oh.
Which might be worse. I'm not sure. Yeah. I know.
It's a crying day.
I know.
I've already cried today.
I'm sorry, sister.
No, it's okay.
Susan's family had the boys buried together and included Susan's name with a picture of her and her boys on the tombstone. Charlie was 7, Braden was 5, and Susan was 28 when she went missing. So Steve still has his trial, and he enters a plea of not guilty to 14 counts of voyeurism and 1 count of child sexual assault material. The prosecutor is hoping that something about Susan's disappearance will come out at trial. Stephen's defense was that anyone in the household could have been the one who took those photos and videos, and he said that Josh was mentally unwell. So he's basically blaming his dead son on being the photographer of all this, right?
Okay.
They even consider cutting him a plea deal if he provides information about where Susan is, but Stephen decides to plead the fifth on every question about Susan. Mm-hmm.
His son is dead.
I know.
So are the kids. What is there left? Why would this piece of shit?
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, it gets weirder. So
you don't plead the 5th unless you don't want to fucking perjure yourself because you know things.
Oh, he knows things. I think he knew things for sure.
Of course he did.
He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. A year after Josh killed himself and his kids, on February 12th, 2013, almost a year exactly, Michael Powell, Josh's brother, who took his car to Pendleton, died by suicide. He was a student at Minneapolis University, and he jumped off of his 7-story apartment building.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
These are not happy or well people.
Nope. No. In July of 2017, Susan Powell was released from prison into a halfway house. And shortly after his release, he was hospitalized after having a heart attack. And police decide they are going to go to the hospital and try to talk to him. They believe that Steve, Josh, and Michael were the only ones who knew what happened to Susan, and Steve was the only one still alive.
Yeah.
But before they could get to the hospital to talk to him, he died.
We're never going to know.
Mm-hmm. In one of Steve's journals, the police did find an entry shortly after Susan's disappearance that said, I feel like Josh did a truly stupid thing and probably disposed of her body in a truly grotesque way. I think he probably went to some former industrial land just west of West Valley City and cremated her. Josh's life with Susan was utterly miserable. Evidently, this tragedy is my answer for why Josh hung on. He wanted to do it his way and avoid a messy and costly divorce. And that is the disappearance of Susan Powell.
That was like the slow burn version of a family annihilation.
Right. I'm curious about Josh and the the sometimes I wonder like why it wasn't an annihilation like initially. Why didn't he kill the
Right.
boys initially? And I don't know. I don't know. It's and why I don't why at all? Why didn't he just kill himself when I don't know. It's so hard to understand.
Well, there's no making sense of that shit.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. That
Oh,
was a big
sister.
one. I'm sorry. I just took up almost an hour.
No, do not be sorry.
Can I put you on hold for 30 seconds?
I need water.
Great, go.
So yes. Okay, sister. Well, okay. That was fucking rough. Also, thanks Chaos Kids Club members. Well, actually, it wasn't just the Kids Club members. What is it? It was Chaos Kids in general.
It was Chaos Kids in general.
So there you go. Mm-hmm. I hope you're happy now. You made me cry.
Oh,
fuck. I mean, today's a crying day. It's fine. Okay, I'm just gonna dive in on this chaos story. It's a downer.
Great.
Okay, so Harold Evans, his interest in journalism began when he was 12. He World War II was in full swing, and his dad was driving steam trains. And once every 2 years or so, the family would get the chance to go on a vacation. So they went to Rhyl, which is a seaside town in Wales. We're in Great Britain. And as they're walking down the beach, they see people kind of lying on the beach, and his dad stops to talk to these men. They tell him that they're survivors of the Dunkirk evacuation, which was an evacuation of more than 338,000 Allied soldiers from the beaches and harbor of Dunkirk in the north of France. Large numbers of Belgian, British, and French troops were cut off and surrounded by German troops during the 6-week Battle of France. And his dad was doing what a good reporter would do. He was asking them the questions about what it was like and what they did and what their equipment was like and that kind of stuff. And these men responded with a story of desperation. They felt they had been let down by the Royal Air Force, by the French. And when Harold and his family got back to the boarding house where they were staying, there was a Daily Mail front page there that had a headline. Bloody marvelous, it said about the evacuation. And Harold thought, but that's a totally different story than we just heard on the beach. So who's telling the truth? And this began Harold's lifelong passion for searching for the truth.
Okay.
Harold's parents were able to save up a little bit of money and got him enrolled in a girls' college where he learned shorthand and typing. He failed his final exams and went looking for work. And that is how he ended up at the Northern Echo, a regional paper based in Northeast England, where he worked his ass off to become the youngest editor the paper ever had.
Wow.
Harold quickly proved to be a principled and adept editor, pushing public awareness campaigns that led to real, tangible changes in the way of public health policies. And this would become a hallmark of Harold's journalism career, to find wrongs that needed to be right and publish articles about it week after week until something was done.
Nice. That's pretty fucking cool. We need more of those in the world.
I'll tell you right out here. So this is mostly based off of a documentary that I watched years ago. It's been on my list to do as a chaos story for like pretty much as long as I've been on the show. And it is at once a story about the story, but it's also like a love letter to true investigative journalists and this man, Harold Evans.
Okay.
So Christmas Day, 1956, in Stahlberg, Germany, a chemist with Chemie Grunenthal paced impatiently, awaiting the arrival of his and his wife's first child. When the news of his son's arrival came, it was also with the news that his child was born with no ears.
Oh.
His wife had been given samples of the company's new wonder drug to help combat morning sickness.
Oh, God.
This would be the delivery of the world's first thalidomide baby.
Okay.
But the fact that one of the first pregnant women to be given the drug gave birth to a deformed baby was simply overlooked. And Chemie Grunenthal began marketing their miracle drug around the globe.
Damn it.
Only a couple of countries refused the license. Most countries accepted the company's test data on face value and allowed the drug in. The United States was one of these countries that did not. There was a woman working for the FDA that determined there was not enough data on the effects of the drug on pregnant women and fetuses, and so declined Grumental's application to distribute in the U.S.
That's good.
In the UK, it was sold under the name Distaval. The active ingredient in both Distaval and Contergen, which is what it was sold as in Germany, was thalidomide. Doctors were prescribing it to pregnant women with morning sickness and describing it as a miracle drug.
Oh, God, no.
Thalidomide was specifically marketed to pregnant women for morning sickness because at the time, it was believed that morning sickness was psychosomatic.
Oh, God, these women are hysterical.
It was just the nerves of being pregnant.
Sure. God damn it.
In the UK, between 1959 and 1961, an estimated 2,000 thalidomide babies were born. Sometimes the babies born without limbs were assumed stillborn and often found to be alive after a time when the baby would finally make a sound or a movement.
Oh.
Some of these babies were actually euthanized by doctors and nurses immediately after their birth, deciding that was the best way to deal with these babies, many of which were born without any arms or legs.
Euthanizing a baby?
Yes.
Oh, God. This is fucking dark.
Yes. So they were born with, many of them were born without any arms or legs. Often they would just have like these little cauliflower looking protrusions of hands and feet where arms and legs should be. In 1962, it was evident that thalidomide was a horror show and banned worldwide.
Good.
And while President Kennedy was holding press conferences and ensuring the FDA worked overtime to contact every healthcare provider in the country to warn them of thalidomide, even launching a public campaign to ensure every woman in the United States was made aware of the dangers of this drug to their unborn babies, the British Minister of Health said no to a public inquiry, no to setting up a drugs testing center, and no to issuing a warning to anyone taking leftover pills in their cabinet.
Oh, God.
He thought it was a fear-mongering publicity stunt.
Well, no, it's very real. Sometimes fear is necessary.
God. Yeah, not even a public statement on the matter was issued. And not only that, but he had no interest in helping the parents of these children born with severe defects caused by this drug.
What a piece of shit.
This left the parents with no other course of action but to sue the manufacturer for negligence. But the manufacturer, Distillers Group, a Scottish company whose worth was equivalent to £4 billion or more today, produced a whole host of famous brands, Johnny Walker Whiskey and Gordon's Gin, to name a couple. And the chairman, Alexander MacDonald, was cold and immovable as stone. The families had to rely on public funding for their lawsuit, but the government thought their case was weak and resented having to spend any money on it at all.
Their case is weak?
Yep.
What the fuck needs to happen to have a strong case?
Well, we're going to get into it.
Oh, God.
What Distiller was saying was what the government was saying and what all the major newspapers at the time were saying. Look, this drug was developed at a time when it was assumed, and everyone agreed, that no drug could cross the placental barrier and affect a fetus. They did the standard tests of the time, and on top of it all, even the legal firm that represented the parents agreed with this assessment. They took on the case of these parents, thinking these parents had no case. Their own lawyers.
Wow.
Harold didn't know about Grumental and the development of thalidomide. All he knew was that these families were not being heard. So he ran an article in the Northern Echo to garner sympathy for these children. He included photographs of some of these kids.
Oh.
He expected people to be moved. But what they were was indignant. They did not want to see pictures like this in their newspaper. Most of the families were scared off by Distiller's lawyers, but 62 families did issue writs. Except once they did, This is why this story is about journalism.
Uh-huh.
It became illegal for the press to print any facts or comment on the pending trial at all. In the UK, the law of contempt prohibits public commentary on a case in a way that could prejudice the jury or the judge. This meant that the press was incredibly hindered on what they could write about in regard to these kids and this drug until every single case had been settled by the courts.
Fuck, that could take years.
Oh, and it does.
Oh, God.
Distillers stalled the lawsuit with those 62 families for over 3 years, and then they settled out of court, agreeing to pay compensation while officially not accepting any responsibility. That was in the verbiage.
Yeah.
The other families that didn't sue had no idea that any of this had happened, and when the press finally was able to report on it, the 3-year statute of limitations for compensation had expired, leaving all the rest of those families without recourse.
What the fuck? No.
This does not get better.
Okay.
This does not get better.
Okay.
In the meantime, Harold had a remarkable career advancement when the national paper, the Daily Times, hired him on as their editor-in-chief. He put together a team of highly experienced investigative journalists and started a series called Insight, where they would dig deep into big stories.
Mm-hmm.
Harold started to make a name for himself as a journalist that wasn't afraid to publish stories that put him in the crosshairs.
Good for him.
It's important to understand that Britain wasn't like the U.S. with its Freedom of Information Act and looser laws around what the press could publish. Harold was digging into stories that could get him called in front of Parliament or charged with treason, and he told his Insight team to keep an eye on the thalidomide families.
Mm.
The 62 families and distillers were still hashing out the agreement, so the press still couldn't report any details, and that agreement was getting worse and worse for the families, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Distillers agreed to settle for 40% of whatever compensation should be.
Oh my God. What the fuck? That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
But only as long as the families withdrew their charge of negligence.
Oh my God. I hate this company.
Uh-huh. So they were going in front of a judge to get the determination of what 100% would be, knowing that they were only going to get 40% of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then a whistleblower came to the Times with 10,000 internal documents from distillers. These documents revealed that there was a huge marketing push for this drug, absolutely unscrupulous, and that distillers had been warned of the dangers of thalidomide on fetuses 5 months before the disaster unfolded. And those 5 months were when the majority of the victims were conceived.
Mm-hmm.
Harold couldn't publish these documents because it would definitely affect the court case. But a second set of documents came their way. These were all in German. They related to Chemie Grunenthal, the actual maker of the drug.
Okay.
Because Distillers was a manufacturer.
Right.
Right?
They didn't
a distributor.
create it. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And a court case that so these documents came from a court case that Chemie Grunenthal was facing in Germany, the size of which had not been seen in Germany since Nuremberg.
Shit.
These court documents outlined a get-rich-quick plan and showed that Contergan, which is what they called it in Germany, was given to 370 guinea pigs, out of which 160 were nursing mothers. The results of these tests were how they were able to claim 0 side effects on mothers or their babies. They were implying these babies were in the womb when they took the drug, when that was patently false.
Oh. What the fuck would a morning sickness drug be good for if you've already delivered?
Right.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't just marketed as a morning sickness drug, but that was one of their kind of target demographics.
Sure. Okay.
Right? Because it was basically like a benzo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with all this new info, Harold made a bold move, risking contempt of court and his own arrest, and published a huge 5-page article by his Insight investigation team that for the first time painted a clear picture of thalidomide as a corporate disaster, not an act of God.
Mm-hmm.
The article included the picture of a Chemie Grunenthal doctor who was a member of the Nazi Party.
It always comes back to the Nazis. Mm-hmm.
The subtitle of the documentary, which is going to be what we call it when we publish this, is the last Nazi war crime.
Oh.
This article did not embolden or empower the lawyers representing those 62 families at all. Distillers was very confident in their ability to win at trial, and ultimately the judge who decided the settlement set the compensation insultingly low. The press reported on it as if these families had just won the lottery.
Of course.
Harold was pissed, and he ran a story about the settlement, still risky, and asked the question in the headline, "What price a pound of flesh?" Which did lead to hundreds more families signing on to this class action. Although most of them were outside the statute of limitations, a judge did rule that they could still sue, though.
Okay.
A bunch of these parents got a letter to attend a meeting with Distillers' lawyers where they were told they would be compensated so long as every parent agreed to the terms.
This is sounding like Erin Brockovich.
If even one parent didn't agree, no one would get money. And the total compensation for all of them was 3 million pounds, divided amongst about 400 children, which amounted to about 8,000 pounds per child.
No. That's an insult.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
About 5 of these families refused to agree and were seen as horrible people by the rest of the families, mostly because these families were not financially fortunate enough to turn away any money while these holdouts were.
Mm-hmm.
The identified ringleader of these holdouts was targeted by Distillers, and he was taken to court. His name is David. I can't remember his last name. I wrote his name David. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
They took David to court.
Mm-hmm.
David was kind of a known in upper circles. He was like an art dealer for a living. He was like one of the ones that could afford to hold out.
Mm-hmm.
So Distillers took him to court and tried to have his daughter removed from his custody.
Whoa.
Based on the fact that by refusing to take their measly offer, he was not looking out for the best interest of his child.
Fuck. These people fucking suck.
Uh-huh. This, of course, would mean that Distillers could then get the state lawyer assigned to his daughter's case as a ward of the state to sign off on this offer.
As their guardians, they can sign off on it.
Yes.
Oh my, this is so gross. This is so gross.
And his daughter was taken into state custody. In fact, they did this to all the children of the parents that refused to settle.
Wow.
Distillers also paid for the attorneys of some of these families in the lawsuit against them. And then the Daily Mail ran David's story for 4 or 5 days until the Attorney General threatened the newspaper with a contempt charge. And then less than a week before David was due back in court, with Distillers claiming no one had won a case against any manufacturers of thalidomide anywhere else, giving David and these other parents no basis for their claims, David is contacted by a U.S. attorney who says, "Hey, dude, we actually won a case against a thalidomide manufacturer over here in the States."
Really?
And David flies to the U.S. to get copies of these court proceedings, landing back in the UK the day he had to be back in court, and he hands these court documents over to the presiding judge. And the judge gave the Distiller lawyers like a scathing twice over about their claim that no one had ever won a lawsuit over thalidomide and returned David's daughter back to him.
Good. Fuck.
But the papers went back to not being able to publish anything about the story, and these families and these children receded from the public discourse. By December of 1972, a decade after the banning of thalidomide and the families still not receiving any justice or compensation, Harold was determined to keep helping these families fight this grave injustice. He contacted David and came up with a very legally vetted plan to print the story of these children from a moral standpoint in order to steer clear of the legalities of the court cases and hopefully sidestep legal repercussions in what he has described as the most restricted press in all of Western democracy.
Wow.
And so because Harold went forward with his moral campaign reporting on these children and did not get cited by the Attorney General, Parliament allowed a debate on the floor about these children and the insultingly low offer of financial compensation Distillers was making.
Good.
That was when other newspapers also started reporting on thalidomide and these children and Distillers. And finally, the whole of England was paying attention.
Oh, David.
And Harold.
And Harold, I mean.
Distillers slightly increased their offer to the families, but everyone saw through it and knew that they were still trying to pay as little as possible. And really, it was just a snowball from there. With the public paying attention, the shareholders' names were obtained. So the distillers' shareholders were contacted and pressured, who in turn pressured distillers to hold a meeting to put together an actual offer that was fair.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, the company was being boycotted and their share value was plummeting.
Oh shit. So this is kind of like they got to get into the sweet spot where because if the company goes to shit, there's not going to be any money to pay out.
I mean, they're worth a lot of money.
Okay. All right.
They're worth a lot of money. So David traveled to the States to do press conferences with Ralph Nader, who had already by then was a high profile public safety advocate. And they spread the boycott of distillers products to the States.
He's like the Consumer Report guy, right?
Ralph Nader's the reason why we have seatbelts in our cars.
Yeah. Because he was like the Consumer Reporter guy of like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Harold's campaign and the boycotts worked incredibly well. Within 9 days of the beginning of the newspaper's campaign and the boycotts, distillers lost 35 million pounds in value. Within 4 months, they finally offered the 20 million pounds the families actually deserved.
Good.
And a trust fund was set up to ensure these children would be taken care of the rest of their lives. But Harold wasn't done. Because there were people, public figures even, that were appalled by all of this.
Mm-hmm.
They had strong-armed this company and they got more than they deserved.
Okay.
And Harold knew that the main reason was because the truth about how and why this tragedy had happened at all still wasn't known. His insight team pressed on into 1973 to tell the story of thalidomide, and they went digging further. Distillers was an alcohol company. What were they doing licensing drugs in the first place? Thalidomide was basically the first drug they ever manufactured. They had read an article written by Aldous Huxley proclaiming that drugs were on their way to replacing alcohol and decided they needed to diversify their product offering.
Okay, I was going to ask early on, like this company does alcohol and prescription drugs? That's a weird combination, but okay.
One thing they discovered in their investigation was that all the established and reputable drug companies, even back in the 50s when thalidomide was supposedly being tested and brought to market, had reproductive studies to determine if there would be damage to fetuses when taken by a pregnant person.
Mm-hmm.
In 1957, distillers did send the drug for testing to an independent tester who reported back that thalidomide could cause damage to the thyroid gland, a known cause of birth defects, but distillers continued manufacturing the drug.
Of course they did.
When Harold and his team were ready to publish all this information, the Attorney General took him to court. They won in the lower court and landed in front of the House of Lords, who ruled that it was fine for the Sunday Times to publish the moral campaign. But the facts on which that campaign was based was illegal to publish. So they appealed to the European Commission of Human Rights, telling them Harold and his team had been denied freedom of speech under Article 10 of the Human Rights Act.
Okay.
So they argued in front of this court, an international court, that sided with them.
Yay.
This led to a change in British law, which was a huge win for investigative journalism in England. And then they ran the whole story. The German company, Chemie Grünenthal, had been a soap and perfume manufacturer. But in 1946, it diversified its product line and entered into the pharmaceutical business. There was a booming demand for antibiotics and sedatives. With so much devastation to the cities in Germany, there was real concern of epidemic outbreaks. Additionally, these were a traumatized people in need of calmed nerves and help getting to sleep. Mm-hmm. Within a decade, by the mid-50s, Germany was calmed down and Chemie Grünenthal had competition. The demand for their sedatives and antibiotics was falling. They were looking for a new product that would boost their sales again. At the time, barbiturates were incredibly popular and people were inadvertently overdosing at alarming rates. So Chemie Grünenthal developed a sedative that they claimed was impossible to overdose on.
I don't think there is such a thing.
I don't know. I don't think so either.
Okay.
But how were they even able to do this? Create a pharmaceutical division surrounded by the rubble and the aftermath of the war?
Mm-hmm.
Well, because they had been Nazis and they had benefited from the Aryanization program, which encouraged Jewish businesses to sell their businesses at radically reduced prices leading up to the war. Chemie Grunenthal had acquired their pharmaceutical division by essentially robbing Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all of 8 weeks from the beginning of developing thalidomide to filing the paperwork to patent it.
8 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Which means the scientists that developed thalidomide had to have been working on the compound before the war.
Mm-hmm.
In 1938, a team of scientists were developing a new and powerful insecticide. When it accidentally spilled, it caused uncontrollable convulsions. This is the origin of nerve gas.
Oh, God.
It was named sarin, S-A-R-I-N, after their names, Schrader, Ambrose, Gerhard Ritter, and van der Linde. It's the S-A-R and then L, or the I and N in Lind.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hitler ordered one of them to create an antidote, Otto Ambros, who after the war went to work for Chemie Grunenthal.
Mm-hmm.
Otto was known as the devil's chemist. He was the one who determined there should be a concentration camp in Auschwitz. It turns out Chemie Grunenthal had been established by Hermann Wirtz Sr., a Nazi Party member after World War II, as a subsidiary of the family's Maurer and Wirtz company. Wirtz appointed chemist Heinrich Muchter, who had escaped prosecution for war crimes for his experiments on prisoners of Nazi concentration camps, to head the development program because of his experience researching and producing an anti-typhus vaccine for Nazi Germany. He hired Martin Stammler, a medical doctor and leading proponent of the Nazi eugenics program, as head of pathology, as well as Heinz Baumkotter, the chief medical officer at Sachsenhausen concentration camp, and Otto Ambros was the chairman of Grunenthal's advisory committee during the development of thalidomide and was a board member when Contrajan was being sold.
Holy shit.
Looking into the patents filed for thalidomide, the company stated that it knew of 5 separate effects on the body, especially the nervous system, that caused a sedative effect. It reduced metabolism, heart rate, circulatory and digestive systems, and had effects on the immune system. But how could they know that? 8 weeks after beginning the development of it in this patent that they filed.
Mm-hmm.
There was no way they could know that, not legally or even practically. And while there was no way to prove it definitively, there was anecdotal evidence to suggest that thalidomide had been tested on prisoners at concentration camps, the effects on fetuses known.
Mm-hmm.
And looking into more patents in the 1940s, many of them were anticonvulsants, which makes sense at a time when the search for an antidote to nerve gas was well underway.
Mm-hmm.
Any antidote to nerve gas would have to temporarily numb the nervous system. But this would be the absolute fucking worst thing for a developing baby in the womb.
Yeah.
Because it would kill developing nerve endings very precisely. The nervous system begins to develop around day 20. So on day 20 or 21, if thalidomide is in the system, the baby will have severe brain damage. Day 21 to 22, it prevents the development of one or more of the or both of the eyes. Day 23, hearing is lost. It may damage or prevent the development of ears at all, inner or outer, and in any combination of that. Around day 24, this is where hands and arms are stunted from growing. Day 30 to 35 is legs and feet. You can basically determine at what point in early pregnancy a mom took thalidomide by this type of deformities and brain damage her baby is born with.
That's awful.
It was clear thalidomide was a byproduct of the Nazi chemical warfare program.
Mm-hmm.
What made it stand out from the rest of them was that it was an addictive sedative, like a benzo. It got people stoned. It was a feel-good drug.
Mm.
And even though a bunch of the Nazi scientists were brought before the courts in Nuremberg, many of them received pretty light sentences. Otto was one such scientist. He couldn't go to work at any of the top chemical or pharmaceutical companies, which is how he ended up at Chemie Grunenthal, a soap maker turned drug company.
Wow. Wow.
In Germany, in December of 1970, after 2.5 years of trial, the longest criminal trial in German history against executives at Chemie Grunenthal, it was suspended with no outcome.
What?
No one was acquitted, no one was found guilty, and the trial never resumed.
Why?
The company had settled earlier that year with the victims in Germany. Grunenthal paid 100 million Deutschmark into a special foundation. The West German government added 320 million Deutschmarks. The foundation paid victims a one-time sum of anywhere between 2,500 to 25,000 Deutschmarks, depending on the severity of the disability, and a monthly stipend of 100 to 450 Deutschmarks. The monthly stipends have since been raised substantially and are now paid entirely by the government, because the foundation ran out of money. Grunenthal paid another 50 million into the foundation in 2008.
Holy shit.
In 1981, Rupert Murdoch bought the Sunday Times, and just over a year later, Harold resigned. In 2005, Harold was offered the job of editor-at-large for Reuters, the world's largest news agency.
Wow.
He is like the star of this documentary, and he's an absolute pumpkin, and I just love him.
I'm loving him too.
This documentary is rough. It's actually available on YouTube now, which was weird because for a long time I couldn't find it. It's totally worth watching. It is so well made.
Okay.
Diageo took over what was left of the Distillers Company in 1997. These new owners of the brand bear no responsibility for Distillers' conduct, but the company has supported the Thalidomide Trust since taking over Distillers and has regularly increased its financial contributions to reflect the changing needs of the Trust's members.
That's good.
They have also committed funding to ensure this long-term financial support continues.
Good.
In 2010, the British government finally issued an official apology to the mothers and children affected by thalidomide.
2010. Okay.
In August 2012, Grunenthal Chief Executive Harold F. Stock, who served as the Chief Executive Officer of Grunenthal from January 2009 to May of 2013, apologized for the first time for producing the drug and remaining silent about the birth defects. At a ceremony, Stock unveiled a statue of a disabled child to symbolize those harmed by thalidomide and apologized for not trying to reach out to victims for over 50 years. At the time of the apology, there were between 5,000 and 6,000 people still living with thalidomide-related birth defects in Germany. Victim advocates called the apology insulting and too little too late, and criticized the company for not compensating victims and for their claim that no one could have known the harm the drug caused.
No shit.
Arguing that there were plenty of red flags at the time. In 2014, the UK Thalidomide Trust found evidence that the German federal government hijacked the 1970 criminal trial of Kemi Grunenthal execs to protect the company. No one was punished, and Kemi Grunenthal continues to deny blame, rejecting any and all claims for compensation to this day.
To this day. Fuck those fuckers. Wow.
Estimates vary widely of anywhere between 10,000 to 100,000 victims of thalidomide. It's not totally known. Roughly 40% died shortly after birth, and the drug also induced miscarriages. Beyond the UK and Germany, cases occurred in Spain, Australia, and New Zealand, Canada, Austria, Japan, and some in the US. Despite that one badass lady at the FDA that did not allow thalidomide to be prescribed in the States, over 2.5 million tablets had been distributed to over 1,000 doctors during a clinical testing program, with at least 17 children born in the US with thalidomide-related defects.
That's too bad. God.
And that is the thalidomide tragedy, the thalidomide scandal, the last Nazi war crime.
Fuck, sister.
You've probably heard them called flipper babies. You've never heard that term?
Maybe.
That's kind of the slang that was that's been used to describe them. Because a lot of them that are born without any arms and legs, they'd have like the little tiny, like hands and feet where their arms or legs should grow, but like not fully formed hands and feet.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, that's kind of flipper babies kind of mean.
It is mean.
Fuck those poor babies.
So you never heard about the thalidomide babies?
No, I have now.
Yeah.
That was fucked up.
It's so fucked up.
So fucked up.
And it always goes back to the Nazis here on Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Yeah, it does. Shit, sister.
Holy shit!
We're at an hour and
we
a
had
half.
a big one today. We had a real big one today. You guys, we did it. Thanks for sticking around.
Yeah. Join the Patreon.
Do
Crime, Wine, and
it.
Chaos. No. Patreon.com, yakety yak, Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Don't talk
Don't
back.
talk.
No, do. You know
Talk
what?
back.
Come. Talk to us. Talk back to us.
It's
We
$5
love
hairs a
that.
month. Or you can join for free just to see what's being posted and hang out over there.
Yeah,
But your
100%.
$5 hairs gets you a bonus episode every month. It gets you the regular episode a day early, and it gets periodically a wine night.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sister,
I love you.
I love you too. That was really
So fucking
chaotic.
chaotic. Goodbye.
Bye.
Crime, Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Jeremy Williams. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Cheers!